Hi, this is Tom. Welcome to the Tales of Mystara podcast. I'd like to start by saying thanks for giving my podcast a shot. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen, especially with the wealth of Dungeons and Dragons related content out there. My hope is that I can provide something a little bit different here, that will set this aside from the other podcasts. If you stick with it, and you enjoy it, then I have achieved what I set out to do, to entertain, tell a story, immerse an audience, and share my love of D&D. Once again, thanks for listening, and without further ado, let's get on with the show. The following podcast is for a mature audience and contains detailed descriptions of violence. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the Tales of Mystara podcast, an experimental podcast that mixes traditional storytelling with old-school pen and paper role-playing games played entirely solo. This could be considered a dark fantasy novel or a solo Dungeons and Dragons campaign. If treated like a novel, then nothing can be assumed. Only the dice can determine the outcome. It cannot be known whether a character will live or die. Nothing is precious. No one is safe from the roll of the dice. If treated like a tabletop role-playing game, there are no players. There is no dungeon master. There is only me, the rules, and the dice.
Halev, Petra, and Zerkev told the people of Lave of what the beastmen intended. The king laughed and tried to drive the trio from Lave. Halev, using the bronze sword given him by the immortals, slew the king and assumed his crown. In the years that followed, King Halev, Queen Petra, and the huntsman Zerkev taught their secrets to the people of Lave and brought all the other villages of Traldar lands under their sway. Villages grew into mighty cities, and Halev was renowned for his fairness and wisdom. The Song of King Halev. This is an ancient work maintained by generations of bards before finally being committed to writing about 6 centuries ago. Date: Moldane 4, Claremont, AC 1000. Time: 9:41 AM. Party status: Claudius, 4 hit points. Theodore, 4 hit points. Elmo, 3 hit points. Ilyena, 3 hit points. Yolanda, 4 hit points. The party is being attacked by a giant bat. I will roll for surprise. The party is surprised by the giant bat, flying out to attack suddenly. The creature attempts to bite Ilyena. Ilyena manages to get her torch up just in time as the creature tries to bite her, but the flame of the torch keeps the creature at bay. First round of combat. Ilyena will attack with her sword. Yolanda and Claudius will move into melee range. Theodore will take cover behind one of the crates. Elmo will do the same and move 10 feet away from the bat behind a crate, ready to fire a slingstone. Rolling initiative. Party 3, Giant Bat 5. The giant bat attempts to bite Ilyena again, but she is ready this time. and blocks it with her torch flame a second time. Elmo and Theodore take cover behind crates, and Yolanda and Claudius close in on the bat. Ilyena retaliates with her sword. A natural 1. Her sword strikes one of the nearby crates. She braces herself, expecting split wood and splinters. But strangely, the crate remains completely undamaged. Round 2 of combat. All characters in melee range will attempt to cut the giant bat down. Elmo will attempt to hit it with his sling. Theodore will remain under cover. Rolling initiative. Party 4, creature 5. The bat, reluctant to go near another open flame, will try to bite Yolanda instead. Yolanda manages to dodge the bat, but barely. Elmo fires his sling. Even with his halfling ability bonus and a bonus for short range, the roll is still too low to hit. Ilyena's sword cuts through the air. She needs a 13. The sword finds only air. Even with her strength bonus, she misses the flying devil. Now Yolanda attempts to take a slice of the creature. She rolls an 18. Her sword strikes true. And hard enough to cut the thing down for good. The party recomposes themselves. Ilyena sheathes her sword, lifts her shield above her head, and slams it hard onto the surface of a crate. Nothing. "That's strange," she says. Suddenly a deep voice comes from a large crate in the corner, saying, "Who's there?" The party freeze and listen intently, looking towards the large crate. "Who are you?" Claudius asks.
"Is Bargle with you?"
The voice answers. "Show yourself," Claudius demands. The disembodied voice simply answers with,
"Oh, well then. Never mind."
And it does not speak again. Yolanda snatches Ilyena's torch away and attempts to burn the edge of the crate. No effect. She tosses the torch back to Ilyena, who returns a dirty look. All the boxes in the room are covered with a thick layer of dust and have not been disturbed for a long time. "Looks like you were probably right, Claudius," Theodore says. "Bargle has probably been hiding out here after all." "Bargle?" asks Elmo curiously. Claudius looks startled. "He's from the 5 Shires, hasn't been in Threshold long," says Ilyena, in Elmo's defence. "If infamy has a name, it's Bargle," Yolanda says sarcastically, and explains. "He grew up in the streets of Specularum and became leader of a gang of toughs. At age 14, he killed a man, an apprentice magic user, and stole his belongings, including his spellbook and a magical primer. Because he was now wanted by the city guard, he fled Specularum. He spent several years on the road, pretending to be an earnest and humble student of magic. He spent a few weeks with every magic user he could persuade to teach him. As his abilities grew, he used his magic to evil ends, robbing innocent people, dominating them by terror, killing wantonly. Ultimately, he ended up in the Black Eagle Barony as personal magician of Baron Ludwig von Hendrix. I can tell by your face you don't know who Baron Ludwig is. The first cousin to Duke Stefan and Lord Alexius Corrigan?" She shakes her head in disbelief. "Ludwig grew up in the shadow of Stefan and Alexius, and he grew up twisted, resentful, and hateful. He was sure, though, that Stefan would die in his military adventures. Sure because Ludwig was planning the whole thing, and that he would inherit the duchy. But Stefan sold his lands and left the country, spoiling Ludwig's plans. When Stefan made the call for talented young Thyacian nobles to join him, though, Ludwig pretended to be an upright, eager, and very lawful follower of the Duke. At least until he was awarded his baronial titles and the lands to go with it. Since then, he's reshaped the Black Eagle barony to his own liking. He thinks he has some divine right, that he'll sit on the throne one day.
The party move through the open doorway to the north in single file. Ilyena goes first, lighting the way with a torch. Yolanda follows closely behind, and then Elmo, Theodore, and holding the lantern, Claudius takes the rear. They enter a 10-foot wide hallway which extends 30 feet toward the east. Ilyena spots a dusty old round hat box lying on the floor in the northwest corner of the hallway.
"What's this?"
she says, reaching out.
"Wait,
Yolanda commands.
it could be trapped."
Yolanda checks the hat box for traps.
Seems safe to me,
she says. Ilyena carefully begins to untie the large bow knot on top of the box when she hears something snap. The modern history of Karamikos began 30 years ago in the empire of Thyatis. Stefan Karamikos III was born in 948. The heir to the small but unusually wealthy duchy of Mashetos. His mother died when he was 9, his father when he was 20, and he became ruler of his duchy at that time. He'd already been an officer in the Thyatis cavalry for 3 years and had been participating in adventures and heroic exploits even longer. He was a friend of the Emperor of Thyatis. His future seemed predictable. Years of service in the Thyatis military and adventuring on the side, then retirement to wise rule of his duchy and to advising the Emperor on matters of war and state. But Karamikos wasn't content with that fate. He wanted to rule territory shaped by his hands and formed in his own image. And that description fitted neither the duchy of his fathers or the empire of his friend, the Emperor. He approached the Emperor with an offer. He'd trade the Emperor most of his ancestral lands and properties for ownership of the Traladara region and a guarantee of autonomy. It was an attractive offer. Traladara had substantial potential to become a wealthy region. But it would take more time and effort than the Emperor was willing to devote at that time. And Karamikos' lands were here now and valuable. The Emperor and Karamikos came to terms and came out of their conference each convinced that he'd emerge with the better deal. Karamikos surrendered his ancestral lands to the Emperor. The few properties he had remaining he sold for the ships and goods he'd need to rule the region properly. The Emperor, in return, recognised Traladara as the Grand Duchy of Karameikos, a sovereign region under the rule of Stefan Karamikos III. Both rulers signed decrees of eternal friendship and mutual defence in times of invasion, and the deal was set. Ilyena must make a saving throw versus poison. It's a natural 20.
"Ow!"
Ilyena shouts.
"It's just a scratch."
Inside the box is a woman's red hat, mouldy.
and faded. Waste of time, Ilyena says and discards it. Elmo playfully lifts the hat onto his head. Stop messing around, Ilyena protests. There is a loud clink sound as something falls from the hat and hits the ground. Yolanda gets there first. It's just a hat pin, she says and pockets the find, quite aware the solid platinum piece will probably fetch a good 100 gold pieces. The party make their way along the corridor to an open doorway at the east end. They emerge into a bedroom 30 feet by 40 feet with another empty doorway at the east wall. A large fireplace is in the south wall. This bedroom was once fine, but its once rich furnishings, a canopy bed, plush chairs, tables and rugs, are now tattered, mouldy and worthless. Somehow the mouldy bed looks very comfortable. Ilyena and Elmo must each make a saving throw versus spells. Ilyena rolls a natural 20, needing a 9 and getting a 4. Elmo fails. Elmo stretches, yawns, walks over to the bed and climbs under the mouldy covers and into a deep, magical sleep.
Theodore, what magic is this?
Claudius asks.
Not a clue.
Theodore says,
Perhaps a dispel magic spell will remove the enchantment.
Do that then, Ilyena says.
I don't have that spell in my spell book. I could get it in town for a price, perhaps.
We can't carry him and all this treasure back to Threshold at the same time, Yolanda protests. We could leave him here. We're not leaving him here, Ilyena asserts. Will the party abandon Elmo or their collected treasure? Will Elmo ever wake up? Or will he sleep in a magical slumber for years, never aging, never changing? Or maybe he will just waste away slowly from hunger and thirst, his skeletal remains trapped in magical slumber for eternity. Stay tuned to discover Elmo's fate.
You have been listening to the Tales of Mystara podcast. I sincerely hope you have enjoyed this episode. If you have listened on YouTube, then I would appreciate you taking the time to subscribe, click the like button, and let me know your thoughts in a comment. If you have listened on iTunes, then I would appreciate it if you would leave a 5-star review. These things really help, and they let me know that the work I put into this podcast is worth it, and that I am making content that people like. After all, that's why I'm doing this. Once again, thanks for listening. I'll see you next session.